Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Rachak Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And back with some more headlines here. Yesterday, which I have an article on that here, Trump ended up extending the deadline. I believe they said for about three days? Was it 3 to 5 days? 3 to 5 days. Interestingly enough, you have sources saying that might just be a another tactic, another way to try and have time to launch some sort of surprise attack or whatever the case is. But it seems here that on the Iranian side, they're already basically ignoring that. So this is a post here from Global Surveillance. Satellite imagery captures 33 Iranian missile speedboats returning to base after striking 3 ships. So here you can see that that's a lot of markings over there. It appears that Iran still has thousands of such boats at its disposal. Some of them are also capable of laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz. So you have this going on. We'll see how this so-called ceasefire extension actually holds up. And then we'll see how that goes. But there's a lot of things going on right now. On top of that, you also have the whole talks now, which it seems like they're starting to try and push that into the more mainstream view more and more, which is the talks about UFOs. Right now, they're saying these scientists that have these, there's been these mysterious disappearances or deaths of these scientists about, UFO information. Okay, so get ready to start hearing more and more about that as time moves on. Now, before getting into this article, I want to read just the headline of this one here. So around the time when they decided to agree on a ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran, which is interesting how it's now like transitioned to like U.S. versus Iran, but really Israel was the driving factor. You also had talks about or some form of negotiating of a ceasefire with Israel and Lebanon. Now here they're saying that Israel is saying that Hezbollah fired rockets on them, which is breach of ceasefire. Hezbollah is saying that, let me see if I can find where it is here. Yeah, down here it says, however, Hezbollah stated stance is that it has the right to resist Israeli forces operating inside southern Lebanon, given they are occupying forces. So you also have that going on there. Now let's read a little bit here. There's one article in particular that is interesting, that might maybe shed some more light onto the strategic aspect of this blockade that the U.S. has actually set up over there, and why that can actually, why that's affecting Iran, and how. So Trump extends ceasefire by 3 to 5 days after Iran attacks third ship in Hormuz choke point. At least 2 fully laden Iranian tankers slipped past U.S. naval blockade amid reports of more going dark. Trump extends ceasefire by 3 to 5 days. IRGC seized the MSC Francesca and a Greek-owned ship named Euphoria, which had been attempting to transit the Hormuz choke point earlier today. Within hours, a third ship comes under fire by the IRGC. So you had Trump saying that the Iranians have violated the ceasefire. I'm sure as these reports are coming out, he's going to come out and say something else. But, he says one thing, does the opposite, doesn't say something, does that. And it's not just from his side, it's really all around. And we mentioned this, right? We said this. This is a part of the theme of war, right? Wartime, no side wants to, give off a certain image about themselves that portrays them as being weak, right? So whether it comes to deception, lying, whatever the case is, those are all used heavily, in these times to try and control the narrative and the popular opinion and all of that. A senior Iranian advisor says the U.S. naval blockade is no different than bombing and must be met with a military response. So while you have all that going on, this article I found pretty interesting, right, by Tyler Burden. And it reads, "Time is running out for Iran. The market is calling BS on mainstream's narrative," Hugh Hendry explains. The stock market is telling a different story from the Iran is strong, America is overreaching narrative being spewed by mainstream media. So basically, this article goes, from the perspective of it's not all, nice and dandy on Iran's side as it may be getting portrayed, right? But that in fact, especially with this blockade that's been set up, they're actually at a very great risk. But they don't want to show it, as being the case, right? So it's almost like Trump is using that, or the U.S. is using that to try and force Iran back to the table, because now they have a time limit, especially with their oil being blocked from leaving that region. And this article go into why exactly that matters so much. It's not just, oh, we're losing money because we can't transport oil out of the region, but also the entire process from the oil in the ground to being loaded on those tankers. So for weeks, the financial war narrative has been Iran strong, America reckless, risks like mercury and thermometer rising. And yet, the stock market has done the opposite. The gap between what you're reading on the front page of the Financial Times or in the Wall Street Journal and what you're seeing every day in the stock market has become too wide to ignore. Then he basically goes in here, just summing up sort of what the mainstream narrative that is pushed out there is sounding like. But here he says, the market took one cold look at this narrative and it did what the journalists would say is unforgivable. The market did not validate. The market did not hedge. The market didn't even blink. It just effing ignored it. It went the other way. It made fresh all-time highs while the entire elitist Tehran-centric fantasy was still being printed as gospel. Simply put, Hendry goes on, markets reduce the world to one ruthless question. It looks at adversaries in conflict and asks, who is constrained and how badly? And the answer, once you strip out the BS, it's not complicated. And below, Henry lays out why Iran is cornered. Iran's oil system is not built to pause. It's built to flow. It's a flow system. Oil cannot simply sit in the ground while strategists argue over maps and how much uranium dust to give over. It has to move. Iran and its system has to move continuously from the rock underground to the tanker in the harbor to the Chinese buyer in Asia. Pause long enough and the whole machine breaks. Interrupt that flow and the problem isn't just lost revenues of like 40, 50, 60 billion dollars. It's the least of your concerns. The problem is physical and irreversible. Because when you suddenly shut the well, remember, there's no physical storage. They pump, they load, they ship. This is concerning, let's say, Iran's oil pipeline system, right? They pump the oil from the ground, they load it onto the ships, and then they ship it. So here, he's saying that they don't have, like, physical storage to be able to buy more time if oil isn't being shipped. And you can just store it in like how some of the Gulf states do. And then once those storage facilities fill up, now you really have a problem. It says if they can't load, if they can't ship, they can't pump. And when you suddenly shut the wells, the oil wells, the pressure underground drops very fast. Do you know what happens? The heavy, sticky crap in the oil, it gums up in the tiny holes within the rocks and becomes like glue. It traps the oil, it makes it really hard to extract, and once that damage is done, it's permanent. You lose a big chunk of the oil. The more Iran is actively either through theater or through bluff, the more that it sits in a standoff, the more it is actively destroying the one thing that it actually depends on. That's the trap. And you're not reading it in the press, but you're damn well reading it on your screens. Because there is where the gap between the narrative of the media and price drops being subtle and irrelevant, and it's why stock markets have priced something entirely different. So this is basically, I mean, based on the narrative or the information in this article, is that Iran is basically now on a time crunch because with this blockade in place, it is now causing this problem for Iran, right? About what we just read here concerning the pumping of the oil, loading it, and then shipping it. It says, with this week's lack of talks, the U.S. ceasefire / blockade still in play now, which Trump said that, right? He said he's going to keep it in play until they basically come and make a deal. The question is, how long does Iran have before it folds from pain? Or its ideological inability to come to the infidels' table makes it a shadow of its former self. So remember, no side wants to look weak, right? No side wants to acquiesce to the other. So if, you're now in a condition where that basically what this paragraph here is saying, you either forced to say, shit, this blockade is causing trouble, we're running out of time, so let's go ahead and make a deal, or you just keep on holding out, or just say, you know what, F all this. We'll just go back to where we were before, right? Because if it's to the point where we're now about to start losing, suffering loss of like oil because of situations like this, then guess what? Them neighboring regions, they about to get it too. And hey, back to the war it is, right? Oh, we'll see, right? We'll see, because what's today? Wednesday. So that that a ceasefire extension, if it lasts that long, right, of 3 to 5 days, we'll see what happens during it. We'll see what happens after it, right? I mean, right now there's just a lot of talk, right? So we just got to watch and see what actually happens. The answer is Iran has very limited time left, according to JP Morgan's latest estimates. With a total export blackout having effectively started this weekend, Iran now has about 15 days before it has to begin production or production shut-ins, which then have to be fully completed by day 30 or sometime around May 20th. Henry concludes the market has priced the probability. Yeah, and then he basically goes into why the market is now not, it kind of like saying it's wising up to understanding this real situation of what's going on, and and so now it's starting to see, which is really just people, investor sentiment, right? It's like people are the ones who are investing and partaking, for lack of a better word, right, in the actual markets. So it's based on what they're seeing, what their perspective is, right, what they're reading, what the narrative that's being pushed is, that's going on around the world. Okay, so all these things are happening, and once again, it's all in the hands of the Lord, right? What ends up happening, what they do here. Matter of fact, let me pull that up real quick. This is a precept that I get a lot, but it's very important to know and understand, right? Proverbs 21:1, the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. As the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he will. So whether it's an idea, a plan, instructions, whatever the case is, these all anger, emotions, like to some degree, right? The Lord is the one controlling this, right? He's the one who puts thoughts into the minds of certain people, certain rulers, whether to use certain words, to agree on certain things, to disagree. So he's using this to steer and gear and sort of control, how he wants these events to take place, right, via his holy angels. And so one way or another, you have this like on and off, on and off, on and off. And all the meanwhile, the global economy is still being held hostage, so to speak, by this energy crisis. Okay, so this is what's called a manufactured crisis. Anyway, with that, I'm going to end it here. Lord willing, that was edifying and informative to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachak Wadash. Until next time, Shalom.